Today's session is AI and the New Rules of Search, what association and continuing education marketers need to know. Today, our team of experts will share how artificial intelligence is transforming the way people discover and engage with content online, and what that means for events, courses, and digital strategies for you. Our goal is for you to walk away with actionable tools and frameworks to help you future-proof your content strategy in the age of AI. I'm thrilled to introduce today's speakers, each bringing unique insights and real-world experience in how AI is reshaping marketing and search. First, we have joining us from Bohu Digital, their CEO and managing partner, Ian Brown. Next, we have Cadmium's Vice President of Marketing, the lovely Jessie Reyes. And joining us from Cadmium as well, Ezra Wolfe, our Senior President of Product. Please join me in giving our speakers a warm welcome, and I'll kick it over to you, Jessie. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Hi, everyone. I am very excited to have this conversation today. We know there's a lot of different AIs or webinars out there, and we feel extremely honored that over 100 of you decided to, spend your time with us here today. So we want to make this as tactical as possible for all of you. We want you to walk away with practical steps to make your organization's content more discoverable in AI-driven search environments. So I'll kick off the conversation discussing how search has changed and the impact that is having on the content, the types of content that we create, and how we want to be found online. And then I'm going to pass it over to Ian. Ian's going to teach us how to create that content. There's a lot that can be uncovered there, so we're really sticking to about 3 things, which is how to select the keywords, the different types of content that are most likely to be surfaced by AI, and lastly, how you're measuring the impact that this is having to your business. And since we're discussing content and AI, I wanted to have Ezra join us and talk about security. Every time that we're putting content out there into the environment, we want to make sure that we have certain things in mind before, as we determine what we want AI models to consume. So Ezra's going to walk us through that. So let's get into it. Let's kick it off and let's talk about why we're having this conversation in the first place. And that is because AI's models are changing the way we search for things. We keep hearing that SEO is dead. And if you've been in marketing, as long as I've been in marketing, this is very nerve-wracking because we spent the last 10 to 20 years structuring our websites and our content based on SEO principles. And now that seems to be put on its head. I got this chart, this data from highervisibility.com. They ran a study in February of this year, and then they ran the same study again in August. And some of the things that really stood out to me, first of all, it's the first time since 2015 that Google's global search market share dropped below 90%. And then we're seeing this rapid adoption of AI tools. ChatGPT usage tripled in the last 6 months. And it's become harder and harder to find somebody that said that they haven't used an AI tool. This rapid adoption of AI tools has a significant impact on how we obtain information. So we're going from search is no longer about finding links, but yet about finding answers. People are asking AI to sort of summarize the web for them, which that has a significant impact on how visibility, awareness, and engagement work online, which has a significant impact on how your members, learners, event attendees discover you online. So now we're switching from SEO to GEO. This is a term that keeps on coming up. SEO, it's, search engine optimization, the process of improving your website so that the content ranks higher in traditional search engines. GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, is a process of creating content that can be easily understood, trusted, and referenced by AI tools. So we're going from when we used to focus on ranking for Google search to now shifting our focus to being referenced in AI answers. When we used to optimize our content for the algorithms, now we're optimizing our content for understanding and credibility. This puts associations, events, and continuing education programs, this is a great opportunity for this market. You're already coming from a place of authority and credibility. So think of GEO as just positioning your organization's content so it's understandable, trustworthy, and structured in ways that AI recognizes it and summarizes it. When your content meets these sort of certain standard, AI uses it to explain the topics, which is what we want to be in. We want to be in those explanations. And this has an impact on our visibility. The content that you've already invested in for your event pages, course descriptions, thought leadership can now be surfaced by AI tools if it's structured clearly. Engagement. People who never visited your site before can now discover your organization when an AI tool includes you in their answers. And lastly, relevance. AI tends to prioritize content that is current, conversational, and credible. Outdated or content that is overly promotional tends to be ignored. So what happens? So how do we leverage our content for this? This is where Ian comes into the conversation. Ian and his team at Bohu helped our team here at Cadmium create this, try to figure this out for us and say, where do we want to be? How do we want to show up? And they've created some content for us, help us with a lot of updates on the website. And we've already started to see some wins from that work. So I will bring on Ian, and Ian's going to take us through next steps and what we do. Hey, Ian.
Hi, Jessie. Thanks. Awesome. Well, it's great to be here with you all today. I'm going to be talking about GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, the process, and the activities associated with increasing your visibility to AI search. A couple things to note here as I get started. We're going to talk about strategy first. I've built these slides out very specifically. We're going to get into some of the detail around what we recommend, what we walk clients through when we start an engagement with them, in the order in which we do that. So there's not just an activity set associated with GEO, but there's also an order to it. You're going to find much faster results and better visibility if we start with strategy and allow the strategy to dictate the activity, not the activity to dictate the strategy. So let's start there. So we're going to talk about strategy. Establish your goals and intent. What does your organization do, and what are people searching for as it relates to what you do? Within the context of those questions, we want to identify transactional intent first before informational intent. Transactional and informational intent are what we're going to use to define content type, but transactional specifically is any intent, any search behavior, whether that be on traditional search or AI, that ends in an action, an event signing up for a class, etc. So they're coming to you for a specific action. That does two things. First, it grounds you against your audience and a lot of the services or some of the things that you would provide to them. It also is a very clear indicator to both AI and Google what it is that you do. So if we start there and work our way up to informational intent, you're actually going to find that longer form content will perform better in AI and traditional search than it would have if the crawlers are sort of confused about the nature of the organization and what it is that you do. So my recommendation here is simple. Answer those questions. Identify transactional intent. Why would people come to your website? What action would they take? Literally, if you built a spreadsheet, you write those things down the left side. Pair them with URLs. Where do we send them? Where do they sign up? Etc. What are the landing pages on your site that indicate that transactional intent that they can actually interact with you on? And then identify a target keyword first. So we're going to start in the SEO frame. There's a lot of different reasons for this that I can't fully get into, but the short of it is it's a place to start with volume, with established data and metrics behind it before we get into the world of GEO, which can be sort of a black box from a strategy perspective in terms of what people are searching for. So we start there and we understand transactional intent, and then you can do a quick competitor audit if you want. Google what people are searching for and look at the top 3 results. Is it long form content that's coming up? Is it landing pages? What's the intent of your competitors or other organizations within your frame? What are they showing and why is Google showing them? So if you think it's transactional intent, but it's all long form content that's coming up for that search, maybe it's informational intent. So you do that quick search, you line them up in Excel spreadsheet. This is the basis from where we start from before we move in an informational intent. From there, we'll go into the next, which is SEO optimization. Just so you can grab the slide. Perfect. Back one. So very simple. This is an SEO technique. When we start working with people, I've found that I think over 90% of our clients have work to do in this area. And it's one of the most important things you can do to immediately raise your visibility. That is simple. This is not a fancy GEO, something that's come out recently. This is getting your HTML structured correctly on your transactional pages, so they act like an essay outline in grammar school, and the title is explicit about what and who. So the key takeaway here, and what I often find most of all is, let's use like continuing education as an example. Your page H1 probably just says continuing education on it, and you're missing the who. Really common, because when you're building a website, you assume the audience, but Google and AI doesn't assume your audience. So go ahead and add the who. Is it continuing education for dietitians? Is it family medicine? Is it et cetera? Right. So in the example on the screenshot I have here, I've highlighted the different headings that you can see in the screenshot. Red is that H1. There's only one H1 on the page. It's the first heading that comes. It's event technology for associations and nonprofits, a guide. So it is a guide about event technology, and we clearly have the who associated. After that, we get into the details of the page. So this is the basic structure. When you build that spreadsheet and you're working through your transactional intent and the URLs where you're driving people that can take action on your page, we want to make sure that we have the what and the who clearly in the heading, both so people are confused, but as well as Google and AI can clearly identify what it is that your organization does. All right, so on the next slide, we have our first GEO technique. So it's becoming very common. This is an easy way to get GEO to reference that transactional page. So just a quick background on why this matters. The average word count in a traditional search is 3 to 5. The average word count in an AI prompt is over 17. Okay, so there's a major difference in how we interact with AI search versus a traditional search medium. And I think the stats over 40% of all AI search ends up in traditional search. So what I mean by that is, if you're in ChatGPT and you ask it a question and you see the little searching ... it's going out to the internet using Bing or using Google and summarizing those results for you. So it's a combination on a longer narrative prompt that's leveraging both AI and traditional search. So they're kind of coming together here. Adding FAQs at the bottom of the page, what you're doing in that H1, you have your overview, you're establishing the what and the who. The FAQs give you a way to provide a natural language question asking process to indicate to the AI search the other prompts that people might ask surrounding the topic that's in the H1. Okay, so in this page specifically, in the heading that I'm showing, this page is about healthcare LMS. So the question's like, what is healthcare LMS? And these are data-driven, specific to SEO that we've pulled out. They're labeled as H2s, so they're headings, so they're easy to pull out when it gets crawled, and they're relevant. They become prompts that someone could use in ChatGPT. What you're going to find is, by managing the correct headings at the top of the page, you're going to get immediate visibility for those keywords. By adding FAQs, you're going to start to create a web around that page of visibility in AI, so it understands all the different places in which to reference you. An easy research using Google, an easy way to do research for FAQs is looking at the people also ask for the target keyword of that page. So if you just go into the search engine results page, there's a people also ask group on that page in Google, and you can look through behaviorally what are some questions surrounding this topic. All right, let's go to the next one. Adding schema. So going deeper into some specific sort of our first technical GEO technique. So now that we have our strategy set, we've identified our transactional pages, we've optimized our headings, we've added FAQs, you can now add schema. Schema is simply the idea that, this is the way I think about it. Crawlers for AI or Google are lazy. right? And they want you to indicate to them as quickly as humanly possible what the page is about and what information they need to know about it. So schema is a JSON coded way for you to insert text at the very top of the page in code that indicates to them what the page is about, is the best way to think about it. They're all different kinds of schema, different types. If you've inserted those FAQs at the bottom of the page, you can use FAQ page schema. So you can use a markup generator at tentacleseo.com. I have one linked here. You go through, you add those FAQs that you add to the page into the markup generator. It generates JSON code that you just copy and paste at the top of the page, depending on what your CMS is. That can be either sort of confusing or pretty easy. But what this does is essentially just makes it really easy for both AI and Google to reference you. Other considerations. Okay, so we've moved into transactional intent. You guys have optimized landing pages for your key audiences that are taking actions on your site. You have FAQs, you have schemas implemented. Now we can start talking about informational intent. So this is a content strategy built around the page that you just saw. So we added FAQs to the LMS for healthcare page. And then here's blogs that we've written and published for Cadmium that link up to that page. So they're relevant topics surrounding those transactional intent ideas, and they're linked up. So by linking them up, and what I mean by that is like literally within the first paragraph, you're linking to that landing page from within the blog. When that page is crawled, they're actually looking at the page itself on a one-to-one basis. What is this long-form content about? What are they writing about? What are the headings, etc.? They're also looking to what other content is it related to. So if you have your linking structure correct, you flow behavior from informational intent to transactional intent. You use the correct heading structure that we just described above, 1H1 with the what and the who. You do not write any of your long form content with ChatGPT, copy and paste over. So controversial topic. It's not that you will be docked just for using pure AI content. We use AI content. But you will be rewarded if you're providing unique perspective and natural language, two things that AI doesn't do very well, right? So it's being trained on the content that's already out there. It's not providing you with unique perspective. AI has a cadence that's a little not a human cadence, and so we want to eliminate that cadence as well. So use AI for research, for outlines, even use it for the first draft. Just go in and edit it, add a unique perspective, and edit it for natural language. Write those blogs, link them up to your transactional content. If you've gotten here in the strategy, you are radically increasing your visibility in AI search engines. This is the foundation for what's to come in terms of visibility. Great. Reporting. How do we know if it's working? Great question. So brand mentions and citations. We talk about GEO, when we talk about AI search, we talk about it in terms of brand mentions and citations. AI search, ChatGPT will mention your organization in the context of a question. That's a brand mention. Go here, this is what they do, etc. They can also cite your long form content. It's essentially, think of it as training data, right? So they haven't referenced you specifically, but they're using those links. They've read that content that you've published and they've summarized it for the reader. This is where no click environment, if you've heard that, comes in, whereas you would have ordinarily gotten a click from Google that had gone to that blog page and that long form content that provided that unique perspective. Now Google summarizing it, showing them, you're likely not going to receive a click for that. So we want to track brand mentions and citations. You can use a specific AI search tool to do this. We have one of our partners is mybrandy.ai. If you want to go to their website, they're a great partner. They can track both brand mentions and citations. We also watch trends around this. In terms of traffic to the site, we want to look at Google Analytics referral traffic. Google AI, if you're going into Google, I'm sure you've noticed, you now have AI overviews on most searches. So if the overview itself is generating impressions or traffic, it's going to show up as an organic or organic traffic in Google Analytics. If ChatGPT, Perplexity, or other AI search tool is driving you traffic, that's going to show up as referral traffic. So we track both. Key thing to note here, we see around a traffic decrease of like 10 to 1, order of magnitude. So if your existing website in your Google Analytics, the organic traditional search channel generates thousands of sessions a month, AI search might generate tens or hundreds. So it's that much of a decrease. But something to keep in mind, as we talked about on the informational search piece, you're not getting clicks, you're training AI. The clicks that you are getting then are transactional in nature. The reason that someone would go to ChatGPT and then end up on your organization's website is because they're looking to take an action or learn more specifically about you before they leave, which is great. So while it is lower traffic, it is the most high value traffic that you can receive. So it's an important metric to track and grow. The screenshot I have here is specific AI overviews in Google as we've grown their strategy. Starting in April and June, specific to Google. So this is coming out of SEMrush, another tool that we use. Okay, last thing before I pass it off to Ezra. We walked through strategy, headings, transactional intent, and those landing pages, how long form content works and rolls up, and then reporting. Final thing, many of you might be in existing SEO motions with SEO activity. You might be asking your SEO agency, what about GEO? Should we be doing something about this? Are we doing something about this? You might have plugins in WordPress, etc. Everything on this page, and I could have gone on for a lot longer writing more and more bullets, are great things. If you are participating in these activities and not receiving any visibility benefit, you need to start at that strategy and work through transactional intent first before you move on to these. We want the strategy to dictate activity. If the strategy is wrong, it doesn't matter that you've added a title tag and a meta description, right? Because you haven't lined up intent appropriately, you aren't targeting the right audience. So we always start with what I've described, and then we move into these things. I hope you all have wicked fast websites. That's great. AI search loves it. If your intent's off, it's not going to matter, right? So start there, move down. These bullets are great in terms of activity, but we want to start with strategy first. And then there's lots of kind of evolving GEO techniques, whether that be testimonials, which is an interesting one. AI will actually crawl your organization's website, look at the testimonials, and use that to determine brand sentiment. So if you're wondering how ChatGPT decided to position you in a specific way, well, I'd take a look at your website first, but then also third-party resources where we get into digital PR, guest posting listicles. What are other authorities saying about you? What are you saying about yourself on your own website? It's taking all of this into consideration before it summarizes and spits back up. So I really appreciate your time. I sincerely hope that this was helpful. I'm actually going to pass it off to Ezra to talk about security next.
Great, thanks, Ian. Ian's been very successful in helping us here at Cadmium with our GEO efforts, so we've learned firsthand much of what he's just talked to you about. I'm going to talk about this from a slightly different angle. My role now is SVP of Product, but prior to that, I was on the security and infrastructure side, and so I had to deal with the other side of all the AI bots and LLMs coming to visit our website, which created a bunch of problems. What I want to talk about, what I want to start with is this sort of friction between making your content as visible as possible, all that GEO and that long form content that Ian just talked about, versus protecting that and ensuring that you don't create vulnerabilities that sort of are new in this world that we've seen lately with AI and LLMs. One of the key pieces here, and I want to talk about is just, let me jump forward on my slide, is how, audience behavior, it's already happened. If it's not 100% done yet, it will be soon, which is that organizations are not, users are not asking questions in the terms of keywords anymore. They're asking using natural language and getting answers. And so what this means is that users are often not browsing websites as much anymore. Ian talked about going for a transaction, they've already learned all the information from talking to ChatGPT or Bing Copilot, and they're going to your website to do that transaction. But this gets really interesting if your product is information, you're not selling a widget. If your product is content, then this becomes very dangerous, because once your content has been sort of trained, or an LLM has trained on your content, you've really lost control of it, and you can't get it back. And so when we're thinking about moving from marketing our content for humans to read to marketing our content for machines and LLMs to read, that schema.org, that schema that Ian was talking about, we have to think about really carefully what happens if our crown jewels, our information, gets swept up into an LLM, essentially. So it allows your organization to disappear, right? If you're not selling a widget, you're selling information, and that's in an LLM, you're going to disappear because the end user is going to get their answer from ChatGPT instead of from going to your website. So we don't want to train the LLMs to do that. But then we have to balance the flip side of that is we still have to be found, right? So we have to give them some more information. So an example of what this might be is like in the old world, the SEO world, which is just like a year ago, we might write a page on our website, something like, how do I maintain my state license certification? And somebody would search for that, and then they would see your page, and they would click over and go to your website. And while they're on your website, they would see that you have this product, this information, and they might buy it while they were there. But now in today's world, they're going to get that answer right from ChatGPT or from Claude, and they're not going to go to your website to find out, to read your article about state certification. So in essence, that might make you invisible in that way. So moving on to the next slide, I wanted to talk about how we can balance discoverability versus defense. We're exposing a new surface area, what Ian talked about, which is long-form content, and we're doing it in different ways. We really have to make sure that that is easily found using the FAQs, the schema markup that Ian talked about. And that's going to improve our citation showing up in the summaries that we found. What we want to be cautious of is that our IP doesn't get diluted. And we don't accidentally allow content that shouldn't be there to be there. And we also have to think about the infrastructure strain from these automated crawlers. I can tell you firsthand, it can be very expensive when all these crawlers, and there's a gold rush right now for information, all these crawlers come to your website and start sucking up your content. Some of them you may GEO for because you want to be found, like ChatGPT. Others are not going to bring you the same benefit. They're being used for other purposes. For example, competitors or research, or so there's no real benefit for you to letting them come and create this strain on your server. So that's something that your IT team is probably going to think about. But this tension between managing discoverability and defense really you have to think about much more carefully what the defense and where the line of who and what LLM you want to come and visit your site. So on the next slide, I'm going to show a little bit here about this emerging infrastructure around sustainable GEO that Ian talked about. And so I just want to give a firsthand example of of what this looks like, which is there are a number of protocols that are happening to help you protect your content from LLMs and give them more instruction in terms of how they can use it. So if you click through to the first example, this is the current robots.txt. This is from the New York Times. You can go there in your browser and look at this today. I screenshotted this yesterday. What this is just a bunch of comments that they have typed in their robots.txt saying, look, you can't use this content to train your LLMs, and you can't use it for machine learning, and that's all disallowed. There's no standard that is machine readable, that is more nuanced than this yet. But if you click through to the next example, this is something called AI.txt. So on the left, we have robots.txt that I just showed you. On the right, you can see in that box that says AI.txt that this is a schema that has been developed that is going, if it's adopted, will allow for you to be able to, with more nuance, control how LLMs can use your content. So you can see, for example, in its the page that is being targeted here says disallow training, disallow train, disallow summarize. And so there are a number of actions and disallow crop. You can't crop those images. There are a number of actions that have been defined in the standard, such as train, summarize, manipulate, analyze. So you might want to summarize some marketing material, but you might not want to allow an LLM to train on some content that's more valuable to you. And clicking through to the next one. One more, please. I here got a couple paragraphs that built here. So going beyond this, what may happen, and so some of this is still theoretical, is thinking about how you can monetize your content and control access to it through things like an API that is specifically developed for LLMs. So machine formatted content rather than human readable formatted content like HTML. I think Ian mentioned JSON, so it's just easier for machines to read versus HTML, which is formatted for the human eye. And so that is going to be an opportunity, I think, in this evolving world where content can be delivered more efficiently. In addition, there is work going on around fingerprinting your content. So fingerprinting of either images or text so that you can find if it has been ingested against your copyright. There's a number of lawsuits that are happening around this right now, but proving it is a little bit of a challenge. So there's research being done on text fingerprinting, so you can tell if some organization has sucked up your content into their LLM. Adobe has a commercial tool called the Content Authenticity Web that they're selling to help you do this. And so the developing technologies around this are still, they're happening today. And I was trying to explain this to, some of the people on my team today in terms of like how fast technology is changing. And in some ways, the web has been pretty stable for quite a few years now. And all of a sudden, it's really changing rapidly. And going on to the next slide, one of the reasons for that is because the AI and LLMs have made it so easy for an organization to ingest your content, whether it doesn't have to be ChatGPT, it can be somebody in their basement who scrapes your website, uses it to create a knowledge base, and now has access to your content in ways that they can use it without actually needing to put your content on the web, right? They just put a chat interface on the web, and you don't know that content was yours, right? You just know that this LLM that's been trained has information that essentially has replaced your information. So how do we deal with that? There are a number of ways that I think are going to become more and more important, which is credibility and trust signaling. As I mentioned, anybody can now get your content if it's publicly available and put it into a knowledge base and attach it to an LLM. But if you don't help the world understand the credibility of your organization and the sort of factual basis of your content, then they will have an advantage or you will lose your advantage, I guess, against somebody who might be able to move faster. And I don't want to delve into the world of science fiction, but it's not unrealistic to imagine like state actors or malicious organizations using your content to essentially get in front of your organization and essentially monetize it instead of you doing that. So what I'm thinking about here is the old moat was, you put in all this work to get SEO ranking, you're on the top of Google, you had all this valuable proprietary learning content. The new mode is, well, you have to do the same thing with GEO, but you also need to control what content is available, right? In the old world, people would come to your website and they couldn't like scrape the whole thing in seconds and put it into a knowledge base like they can today. In this world, you really have to control that. And then trust signaling, which is just continuing to build trust around your organization. There are a number of different ways you can do this. Ian mentioned schema, and I think he actually had it on screen, the organization markup, which allows you to say, this is who I am, and associate that metadata with your content so that they're always linked together. There's also an organization called C2PA, which is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authority. So another kind of emerging organization to help address this particular issue. You can also be defensive around this by ensuring that you're logging all the visits from your content, that you have author credentials and all the information that creates credibility on your content. I just, I don't know how this is all going to play out yet, but there's change happening. It's happening really rapidly. So on the final slide here that I have, you can't really stop this from happening because it's already happening. So what we really have to do is actively participate in the change that's happening. These organizations that I mentioned, such as C2PA, there's another one called IAB, Tech Lab, which is the content monetization protocol. This one is really interesting. A number of organizations, Cloudflare has already put in place a billing method for entities to come and essentially buy your content from you as a third-party broker. So if you're a Cloudflare customer and they are a Cloudflare customer, Cloudflare will build them on your behalf as their LLM or their spider comes and sucks up all your valuable content to be monetized for it. I have to imagine that organizations, those of you who are associations, the ASAE and Association for Medical Specialty Executives, if these organizations aren't thinking about it, they probably will be soon. And so advocating potentially for regulation, but at least for industry standards is probably something that the sort of thought leaders and market leaders are thinking about here. How we're going to create this sort of trusted source prioritization, or not prioritization, but helping the LLMs understand, why your organization is a trusted source versus some other organization. So really, it's an exciting time to be doing this. It's fairly scary if information is your product, but certainly you should be paying attention to some of the changes that I've mentioned here. And with that, I think I will hand it back over to Amanda. And you might be on mute.
I was definitely on mute. Thank you, Ezra. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, first of all, to our speakers for providing such great information. There's so much here to unpack, and we have time for questions. We'll take a few more if you have some, so pop them in the chat, and I'll keep an eye out for those. We have a couple here, and actually, Ezra, I've got the first one for you. Is there anything, without going into too much detail here, anything we can do at the Cadmium product, at the product level to optimize GEO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think many of our products, depending on which one, already allow for ad hoc content to be created. So things like the FAQs that Ian mentioned certainly can be created, and many of our customers already do that, particularly on LMSs, because that's sort of more persistent content, right? It's up year round. On the event content, the same in terms of those websites. We also do use the schema.org in some of our products, for example, for learning content and for events to include the date and the summarization of the content. And we're continuing to look at what's available in terms of some of those emerging standards that I mentioned.
Sounds good. All right. This next one, I'm actually going to ask Jessie here. What types of content formats do you think perform best in AI-driven search? And Ian, you might have something to add to that too.
Yeah. And before we get into the question, I want to touch on something that Ian said about the strategy and sort of revisiting your overall strategy. I think as marketers, we get too used to just like, okay, we talk about these things, we create this kind of content, and we just kind of get onto that rinse and repeat and sort of do the same thing. This is giving us an opportunity to sort of sit back and say, okay, wait, what are we really promoting, trying to sell, and to who we're trying to sell it? So when we had to go through all of our H1 tags, H2 tags, all that, it made us going through that sort of process of really diving into like, what are we trying to say to who and why is this important, was important. For us, I think one of the things that's worked with us very well are obviously the FAQs, saw significant traffic. The other ones that get referenced a lot are like top 5 this or top 10 that. So lists, it seems like AI search engines really like a list. So every time we've done any sort of blog content on a list, I will then, a couple of weeks later or whatever, see it starting to get referenced. So those are 2 that are really worked well for us.
Perfect. Those are really great examples. I do love a list, so AI does too. Why not?
Why not?
Okay. Ian, this next one's for you. What are some common misconceptions that organizations have about AI and SEO right now?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey over the last 12 months as this has come out. We've started to develop these techniques, tested what's worked. because SEO wasn't stagnant either. And so there's sort of a lot of conversations with people that are trying to navigate, like, what should we be doing, right? Like, what are the activity sets? Like, what is GEO, et cetera? At this point in time, what works for GEO works for SEO. And that wasn't true 6 months ago. So like the SEO that we're familiar with of the last 1 to 4 years, where you could write a blog and you could formulate based on a keyword formulation and use a tool to kind of stuff it with the right, you say the right things in the right way, and that'll get you ranked. That doesn't really work anymore for either. It's much more about intent and bringing a unique perspective in your content. And so in any content type, if you're promoting a webinar, any learning content, et cetera, if there's text on the page that's bringing a unique perspective that's relevant to intent, it's going to work for both GEO and SEO now. So that's the biggest change. The biggest misconception is that there's a huge gulf. And when essentially over the last 3 months, even Google's brought that back. And so they've incorporated principles that were being used in GEO for AI search. They've brought them into traditional search as it's introduced more AI features into like the Google, Google.com specifically.
Got it. All right. It's amazing how fast things are coming together. I feel like technology used to be, it would take a little bit, right? So now it's just warp speed, I feel like. All right. We have a couple more questions here. Let's see. Jessie, if I can ask you another one. How do we make sure session descriptions, speaker bios, and abstracts are structured to appear in AI-generated results?
I think we go back to answering the questions: who, what, when, where, right? And not letting AI create the descriptions for you. We're seeing way too much of this, and you can tell right away. I use it for research. Our team uses it for research all the time, and then sort of digging into that. And I also use a sort of test of, is my 9-year-old going to know what this is about? Sometimes you read these descriptions, these session descriptions, and they say a lot of the big fancy words, but you still don't know what this is about, right? You're like, this fancy webinar title and description. I'm like, but what are we learning here? So if my 9-year-olds wouldn't be able to decipher what we're learning here, it's probably not structured and not simple enough. They want that credibility. They want that authenticity. So yes, AI is great for research. I love good prompts, love the research. But when it comes to creating that bio or that webinar description, just keep it human. Keep it human and answer the questions: what, when, where, and why.
I love that, Jessie. And you know what's interesting? I heard recently at an event that one of the things that when you're moving forward, what's next? And this was an event, kind of future-proofing your event webinar, actually our last one. And they said, kind of going back to the basics, which is interesting. We're in this AI-driven world, but I keep seeing and hearing that go back to like the easy thing, right? Go back to the foundational questions, like you just said, do what, when, where. So that is definitely a continued theme that's been happening recently or discussed recently. All right. So Ian, I've got a question for you. Are there any newsletters or digests that we can subscribe, the audience can subscribe to stay updated on this landscape?
Yes. Let me make sure.
Sounds like you have resources.
He's like rolling out the Rolodex here.
So I'll just give you some of the ones that I personally follow. There's a lot of influencers, et cetera, that you can like follow, et cetera, people that you like. For just, I grew up in a newspaper family, so I like newsletters. Searchengineland.com is my favorite. They do a lot of their own research, covering SEO and GEO and like really looking at the behavioral data. So like a really cool one that's just come out is that AI search actually, in some cases, increases traditional search as well. So like all search increased when people started using AI more, which I thought was one that kind of like went against some of the things that you're seeing. And that's not in every case, but they do a lot of their own research. So I love that. Ahrefs and SEMrush are others that we follow on a regular basis.
Awesome. All right. Got a couple more questions coming in here. Ezra, actually, I'm going to ask you here. So someone was asking about something that was already mentioned about editing and adding to text generated by AI. But can AI crawlers decipher what content was created by humans versus another AI tool?
I'm gonna let Ian take that one.
Okay.
That's his comment, so he's probably maybe better.
Yeah, no worries.
I can try and fake it though.
Yeah. The direct answer to the question is yes, they do know whether you've written with AI, but it's a percentage scale, right? So it's almost never 100% AI, and almost no content now is 0%. And so that's where the recommendation comes from. Don't just straight copy and paste from ChatGPT. It's just not fully developed. Like, you know your audience the best. It's not fully developed for your audience. It's not going to have a unique perspective, etc. It doesn't mean you need to rewrite the whole thing. You can definitely use ChatGPT. I'll just give you a quick story. We work with, at any time, we're working with between 10 and 20 human writers writing our posts. And so we launched a project to determine whether they were using AI to write their posts. And the answer was inconclusive. In a lot of cases, because even if you're using AI to research your articles, that's going to show up in a rating system. It's 30% written with AI, it's 50%. So that's where we kind of fell into, let's write for people, let's write for our audience, let's bring unique perspective, and let's make sure it kind of sounds natural. It doesn't sound like AI. And if you're kind of covering those bases, you can use AI content and you're not going to get dinged. And we've seen that show up in performance.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, our last question as of right now, actually, Ezra, I'm going to go back to you. So our very first question that was asked, there was a bit of an explanation or addition, I'll say. So specifically within the learning content, and again, this was back to the first question, which now I'm trying to find. Let's see. Okay, so what can we do at the product level to optimize GEO? Excuse me. And then the further question was specifically within learning content, such as on-demand webinars, courses, etc.
Sure. So, I would be cautious of allowing your courses to be exposed to an LLM, right? Because, as I was saying, once that content has been indexed, it becomes part of that LLM, and the rationale for people to take that course kind of disappears because they can get that information elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying an LLM is the same as a good learning course or a good webinar, right? But I think the answer to that is sort of to take Ian's approach, which is to create transactional content next to it or that leads to it. Because really, I think what you're probably asking is, like, how do you get people to register, or how do you get people to attend a webinar? And so the content that has transactional intent that then drives the learner or the user or attendee from the LLM response to the website to enroll or register is probably the goal. And so I would go back and point to the FAQs and the transactional content rather than the long form content.
All right, that sounds good. Well, that's all of our questions for now, but if you have any more, I'll provide contact information here in just a moment for our speakers. And again, I just want to thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Jessie, Ian, Ezra, for providing us with your information today and bringing your expertise to us. Obviously, a big evolving topic, a hot topic, as I said earlier. So lots of great information, and we appreciate it. I hope everyone is leaving with a clearer understanding of how AI is transforming search, along with practical tools to make your content more discoverable. I know I learned a few things in both traditional and AI-driven environments. If you would like to continue the conversation or have follow-up questions, we encourage you to reach out to our speakers. The email for Cadmium and for Bohu, and our speakers have been very generous in saying, hey, reach out. They would love to keep the conversation going. I know Ian gets excited about having conversations with people and sort of about this particular context and being able just to sort of, figure things out, especially for small business. So that's very generous, and we appreciate it. And on behalf of Cadmium, thank you for spending part of your day with us. We really do appreciate it and wish you continued success in your upcoming events and continuing education programs. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.